That's the prayers of the faithful. I don't need that yet. There we go. All right, good morning. Some of you know that I'm a hiker, a backpacker, and so on. So I tend to talk a lot about the woods and hiking and so on. I apologize for that. That's a pastime that I enjoy. If you are a hiker, or if you desire to be a hiker, I want you to think about, perhaps in your case, your greatest fear of hiking, or why you don't perhaps hike or backpack. I want you to think of what's the worst thing you could experience as you backpack or hike. Okay? And I'm going to give you a couple of them. Okay? Who's afraid of ticks? I hope everyone's afraid of ticks. Number one fear of ticks, number one fear of hiking is ticks. I have a friend who unfortunately ended up with Lyme disease. It's not a nice disease if you know anyone who has ever had Lyme disease. It takes a very long time. The road of recovery takes anywhere between 6 months to a year, and even sometimes the side effects after that. So ticks. Second is wild animals. So bears, coyotes. Once I had a porcupine scare the heck out of me, only because he was right at my feet and I didn't even see him. Once I walked by him, he took off and it scared me to living death. Third one is perhaps injury. Like if you're out hiking and you're miles from anywhere, if you twist an ankle or, God forbid, you break an arm or a leg, how do you get back to receive treatment? Whether you need to go to the hospital or even if it's just home with a bag of ice on your knee or your ankle. And the last one would be the fear of getting lost, which is a real fear. I mean, I have gotten lost a few times. If I'm on a trail and I decide to be brave and wander off to probably a place I shouldn't be, suddenly I find myself after half an hour or so of getting lost. But I always find if you sit and just calmly get out your water bottle and just sort of rethink and sort of retrace your steps, you can usually find your way out okay. I mean, the greatest fear for people who are worried about getting lost would be having to spend the night with no provisions, no shelter, no food, and just trying to figure out how you get out the next day. So spending the night in the woods alone and lost is very scary for some. Being lost is not fun. In our lives, being lost can take also other ways. We can be lost in other ways. We can be physically lost, as with our journey into the woods and getting lost. We can also be intellectually lost. If you have a friend that talks and one story leads to the other and to the other, I have a sister like that. Sometimes there's no point to her story. She just wants to talk. And I would say to my sister, you lost me. I'm lost. I don't know where you're going with your conversation. We can be intellectually lost. And in our gospel today, we hear the story about a man named Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus is spiritually lost. We hear in the reading that he is looking to see who Jesus was. He was trying to figure out who Jesus was, to the point where he climbs up a tree. He is spiritually lost. Here's a man who was rich. He's wealthy. He had everything that he could possibly want. And yet there was something missing in his life. And along comes Jesus. And Jesus, we know, there were hundreds and hundreds of people as they've traveled and followed Jesus. There were so many people that Zacchaeus couldn't see because he was so far back. Just people were lined up along the roadside. He had to climb a tree. And along comes Jesus, and in a sea of faces, he sees Zacchaeus up the tree and calls him by name. And he says, Zacchaeus, I must stay at your house today. So Zacchaeus was happy to welcome Jesus. Zacchaeus was looking for something. He was looking for Jesus, and Jesus was looking for Zacchaeus. This was no chance encounter. Zacchaeus was trying to see who Jesus was. Zacchaeus was lost and searching for something. Now, if you enjoy adventure, I'm hoping you know who this guy is. Who's this? Bear Grylls. Correct. He's a Brit. He's British descent. Has written many books, and he's done many documentaries and so on. But he had a series. It was covered in Britain, and then many other networks picked it up. It was called Man versus Wild. He always put himself in very dangerous situations in dangerous places around the world. Bear Grylls. And as a young child, Bear felt that he had a real relationship with Jesus, 4 or 5 years old. And at the age of 16, his godfather died. And his godfather was a very important person in Bear's life. They had a very good and meaningful relationship. They were very close. And while dealing with his grief at the age of 16, Bear Grylls climbs up a tree, much like our friend Zacchaeus. And he says, I remember praying a simple prayer up a tree one evening. And he says, God, if you're like I knew you as a 5-year-old, would you be that friend again? And Bear says it was no more complicated than that. The amazing thing is that God asks that if we sort of open the door a little, he will do the rest. Now, Bear had faith as a very young person, and again as a teenager. But as he got into his 20s and his 30s and he found fame and fortune by what he did, he got away from his faith. As material things came to him and he was wealthy, and still is today, he had everything that he could possibly want, much the same as Zacchaeus. But he says there was something missing. There was some gap in his life that material things just could not fulfill. So Bear was invited to take Alpha. And through Alpha, he returned to his faith and is today an advocate for the program, for the course. Now, both Zacchaeus and Bear Grylls were spiritually lost. They had everything that life could offer them, and yet life was incomplete. And if we're honest with ourselves, we are all very spiritually lost at some point in our lives. That's just a natural thing. But as Bear says, if we sort of open that door a little in our lives, God can move and do powerful things. And what I think Bear is referring to, because Revelation 3:20 says, Jesus says this, listen, I am standing at the door knocking, and if you hear my voice and open the door, I will come into you. As Bear says, we need to only open the door a little bit. Open the door of our hearts a little bit. That is all God needs. And I think he is referring to Revelation 3:20. And there's a famous painting by William Holman Hunt that is an example of Revelation 3:20. And it's Jesus standing at a door, and he's knocking. I don't know if you've ever seen this painting before. It says that God waits patiently for us to open the door of our lives to him. And an observer once pointed out to Hunt that he says, I think you made a mistake in your painting. He says there's no door handle on the painting. There's no door handle for Jesus. And he says that's completely my point. Jesus will knock, but the door handle is on the other side. It's up for us to open the door to Jesus. Jesus will stand there very patiently and knock, but it's up to us to open the door. And Hunt's friend also pointed out that it looks very disheveled in the front of the door. And he says that too is by design, because our hearts are like a garden that are very unkept. Everything is overgrown without Jesus. If we let Jesus in, our garden becomes to bear fruit. Without Jesus, our garden is overgrown and unkept. Jesus knocks on the door to the heart of Zacchaeus, and he responds with an invitation and opens the door. So much so that Zacchaeus says, half of everything I own I will give to the poor. And if I've defrauded anyone, if I've cheated anyone of anything, I will give them back 4 times as much. Zacchaeus has become poor once he's experienced Jesus. He has gone from wealth to poverty within a matter of minutes because he is now penniless. Everything he has given away. I want to finish up with a personal story of Jesus knocking, just because I think it's important for us. We read the scriptures, but do we experience Jesus knocking in our own lives? I have a friend whose dad passed away almost a month ago. Now, I've known my friend and I, we were boyhood friends. We've grown up together. And we're still friends today. My friend he's a self-professed atheist. He doesn't believe in God. His father was a very devout Catholic. His mother was a very devout Catholic. So I went to be with him and his family at the death of his father. And after the funeral, it was in Cape Breton, a small town, and we are proceeding from the funeral to the gravesite to bury his father. And he turns to me, and it was just the two of us walking together, only the two of us. And he turns to me and he says, "David, I think there's hope for me yet." This is a self-proclaimed atheist. And I was curious as to why he would say that. I never thought I'd hear my friend say that. But here's the reason why he said that. Anyone here do the Wordle? Very good. Let me explain the Wordle to you for those who don't know what the Wordle is. I've never done the Wordle. I don't know much about it. But here's what I know how it works. Okay? He did the 6-letter Wordle that morning of his father's funeral, the very morning of his father's funeral. So what happens is you put letters in the first time. You get 6 chances to get the word correct. Okay? So as you put letters in, if the letters are completely wrong, the letter is not in the word at all. So you put in E, Q, U, A, L. E and L are in the word, but because they're yellow, they're not in the right spot. They're not in the right location of the word. You get 6 chances. And in this case, we went all the way down to the bottom, and the word is solve. So L and E are in there, but they weren't in the right place. Here's why my friend thinks that there might be hope for him yet. Here's the word that was the word of the 6-letter Wordle the morning of my friend, supposed atheist's, father's funeral. The word was Dickie. Okay? I've known his father for 57 years of my life. I never knew his real name. But guess what his nickname was? Dickie. Jesus knocks on the door of each and every life, yours and mine. But we have to be willing to be found. We have to open that door just a crack, and God will do the rest. So I explained to him how God knocks. And I said, in your case, I think he's actually pounding on the door. In the case of Zacchaeus and Bear Grylls and perhaps my friend, life is good, but life with Jesus can be so much better. He knocks on the door. We have to be willing to respond. Jesus patiently waits for us as he knocks, to open the doors of our hearts, even if it is just a crack. Because we hear in our gospel, for the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost.